Now we're going to go ahead and remove the radio, but the first thing we got to do is we got to remove the cover for the speaker here first. All it is held on by 4 clips here. So you just get yourself a pry tool and work yourself under here. That's it. You got the clips here. You can set that aside. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to remove 2 screws here. They're held in place by 7mm screws. So go ahead and remove the screws. So you got your screws removed. The next thing you want to do is you want to remove this tray. It's held in by 2 clips here. So what you want to do is get yourself a pry tool again and just pry it up. Once you have this removed, you can go ahead and set the tray aside. The speaker is connected with a wire, but you don't have to disconnect it. You can always just turn the tray and set it aside. Make sure you don't crimp this wire or pinch it. Just leave it to the side. Next, you want to remove 2 7mm bolts on top here as well. Loosen those, remove them. Be careful not to lose them. Just set it aside somewhere safe. Now we can go ahead and remove this. There are clips along the side here that are holding it in place. You just need to pry forward on the radio. Taking your time. If you have a pry tool, you can go ahead and use it to assist you. Just be careful not to scrape your dash. And that's it. Now you have the radio removed. We can go ahead and start disconnecting the wires. The only thing connected to the screen now are the wires connected to the buttons on the face of your radio and the climate control. Just disconnect these cables and you're done. Now we got 6 more 7mm screws on the side of the head unit here. We want to go ahead and remove those. Be careful, you don't want them to drop and lose them. Alright, now once you've taken out the screen, the last set of cables are your main wiring harness, your LVMS cable, your GPS cable, and your USB cable. Once you've disconnected all of these cables, you're pretty much done. We can take this thing to the bench and start putting it all together. Once we got this is our factory unit, and this is going to be our new unit. The first thing we want to do is we want to start removing some stuff from the old unit. And what we want to do is we want to take off our buttons. You want to remove these clips from here, and we're going to transfer them to the clips on this one here. And once we take out our buttons here, we'll set them aside because we'll use them later on. I'll show you. And then we want to remove the screws from this cover here, showing our circuit board. And we're going to transfer the circuit board from here, or we're going to transfer our climate controls from here over to here. And then we'll put it all back together, and then we can go back into the truck. So I'll walk you through it step by step. First, we want to remove the buttons here, and they basically push out. You squeeze the tabs on the side very gently, and you just push them through. You can set those aside. We're going to use them later. And then you want to remove these orange tabs here. Just be gentle with them because you don't want to break the clips. And I just transfer them one at a time from one to the next. All right, you want to be careful with them because these things tend to fly off. So take your time when you're removing them. You don't want to lose them. In order to prep for the removal of the circuit board here, we want to go ahead and remove the screws. There are 2 screws holding here, 2 Phillips screws. We can go ahead and remove the cover for the new radio. Next, you want to go ahead and remove these screws around here. They're actually T8 screws, so you can go ahead and remove them. Once you have all the screws removed, you can go ahead and lift the cover off. And this will reveal the circuit board that we need to work on here. The aim of this is, what we're trying to do is we want to transfer all these circuit boards from here to here, retaining the factory buttons on the bottom for the auto climate control, and the top buttons here for the radio functions. We're not going to use those buttons, and I'll show you about that. Again, we have screws all the way around here. They're very similar to these, but they're shorter, so be careful. Make sure you separate them. Take your time with this process because you don't want to scratch the board or do anything that could damage the circuit board. So just take your time and remove the screws. It's quite a bit of screws, but it's no big deal. Just take your time. You'll get it. All right, once you have all the screws removed, Make sure you put them somewhere safe, and you can go ahead and remove the circuit board here, and you can flip it over to see what I'm talking about. Now here we're going to use all these same buttons here for the climate control, but we won't use the ones up here for the radio control. So what we can do is go ahead and remove this and leave it with the factory radio. Now what I want to do next is let's put this to the side somewhere safe real quick. And then we want to transfer our buttons from our climate controls from this side to this side. Now they're oriented the same and everything is the same. You just want to transfer everything from one to the other. Starting with the left button first, the left knob first. We'll go ahead and remove it. Remove the light. It falls into place on this side. It lines up exactly. And then we can drop our button in and it all lines up exactly the same as it did before. Plug and play. Then we'll do the other knob. We'll take it off. Take out our light. And again, our button should just fall into place. And it should all line up perfectly. Last but not least, we'll take our buttons, move them from one side, move them to the next side. Just make sure everything is sitting in there nice and snug. Now we can bring our circuit board back over. Be careful with these ribbon cables. You want to take your time and place it in place. These tabs here are a guide. Now we can go ahead and put back in our screws. Make sure you use the short ones and not the long ones. You want to put these screws in tight, but you don't want to over tighten them because you don't want to crack the board. So just take your time, work your way around. They'll all line up. Now that this board is secure, we want to go ahead and secure the smaller board here. Now for this board here, you want to make sure you line up the holes in the corners up here to start, and then you'll see where the other holes align. They sent us 2 bags of screws. These are the screws you want to use with these because the screws that we took out from the board originally are too long, and if you try and screw them back into here, they're going to pierce the screen. So make sure you use the larger set of screws that come from here. Once those screws align, you'll see where the other screws go. And now our boards are tight and secure. Now we want to go ahead and put on the cover. Once you have the cover on, you can go ahead and replace the screws. You can also use 2 of the same black screws like you use for the circuit board in the top holes up here. All right, we're almost there. The last step is we're going to transfer our Sync 3 module to here from our old radio. Now that you're done with this, just set it aside carefully so that you don't lose any of the parts that you had here. Now we can take our original factory Sync 3 module, and you want to go ahead and remove the screws. They're just Phillips screws that are holding it in place. We want to go ahead and remove this module. Once you're done, you can remove the module and set the old screen aside. You don't need this anymore. So what you want to do is you want to line up these holes with the holes in our Sync 3 module. The holes don't exactly line up. There was an error in the manufacturing. So what you want to do is you want to catch one hole here, and then you can catch the other 2 holes on this side. The important thing is you want this antenna facing to the top of the unit. With that, we're pretty much done. We want to go into the car. There's only one thing we have to do is we need to connect our A-pin extension cable from here to here. And that's the only thing we really need to connect right now before we go into the car. What we want to do is we want to put our purple side in here till you hear it snap in place. And then you want to put the orange side on this side till it snaps into place. Once we have that installed, we can go ahead now and we can move to the truck and start putting everything back in. You want to grab your buttons. Don't put the buttons in yet. You want to put them in once you're inside the car, and I'll tell you exactly why and what my train of thought is. All right, so before we continue, now we're back in the truck. Before I bring the radio in, there are a few things we want to put in place so that when we have our radio, we can start wiring everything up. So there's some stuff that we want to put behind the dash. Now listen, if you want to use your 4G LTE antennas for this radio, you're going to have to put them behind the dash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snake one back from here behind the glove box and mount it somewhere behind the dash up here. And I'm going to repeat the step on the other side as well. going to go by the steering wheel underneath the dash and come up through here and mount it somewhere over there. You also want to snake your USB outlets. For now, I'm gonna put them in the glove compartment, but later on I'll probably transfer them and see if I can move them to the center console. But for now, I'm gonna put this through the glove compartment, and we're gonna mount the GPS unit that comes from AutoTech Pro. We're gonna mount it up somewhere back behind here. It doesn't really matter where you put it, you just want to put it somewhere flat. You just want to peel off the adhesive and place it back there and stick it onto something flat. And then you can coil up the wires and tuck them away behind the dash, just so that you don't have a bunch of wires. Now we can go ahead and pass the USBs through. All you got to do is open your glove compartment. There are 2 tabs on the side. You just pull them down and you'll have a hole on the side of your glove compartment that you can just push the wires up and through to the other side. So now you have your USBs. And I'm going to do the same thing with the SIM card tray. I'm going to use my SIM card tray and I'm going to leave it in the glove compartment area here. In case I want to add a SIM card later on, I'm just going to feed it through and leave it down here. And last but not least, we're going to run our 4G LTE antennas. I'm going to do one on this side, and then I'll show you where I snake it towards the end, and I'm going to put one on the other side as well. All right, so now we have our 4G antenna, our aftermarket GPS, our SIM card, our aftermarket GPS, our SIM card, and our USBs run to our glove compartment. Now it's time to bring the radio in and start putting everything back together. All right, the first thing we want to do is we want to get our wiring harness ready. What you want to do is connect your CAN bus here, plug it in, make sure you get a nice click to make sure it's seated properly. Check your pins to make sure nothing is bent. Once you're good to go, slide it in, you get a nice tight connection. Okay, once you have that done, the next thing you want to do is you want to connect your factory sync plug to here. It should only slide in one way. Push it in until it clips in. Once that's in, you got that out the way. Once you have that connected, we're going to start putting in our radio, and we're going to work with the ones that have the most slack. Now we can take our screen and start connecting things up. Now let's go ahead and start plugging all our wires in. Let's connect our wire from our radio harness, and it goes in nice and snug. I like to work with the ones on the bottom because they're harder to get in and out. So we'll go ahead and we put that one in first. Then we can go ahead and put in our USB. These only go in one direction and they only fit one way. So if it's too hard, then you know you're putting it in the wrong direction. We already have our LVDS cable connected, so we're good there. Next, we can put in our other connector from our main wiring harness, and it clicks in. Make sure it's tight. Next, we'll put in our SIM card cable. Again, make sure it's clicked in nice and tight. And then last but not least, we're going to go ahead and put in our auxiliary audio cables. We may not need this, but I'm going to go ahead and connect it anyway. Again, you want to push it in tight and make sure it clicks in. Now we can go ahead and connect our 4G antennas. Let's go ahead and connect our aftermarket GPS. I'm going to connect the shorter cables last. Our factory GPS goes here and our factory USB goes in here. Then you want to connect the main factory harness to the radio. Before you connect it, make sure that you have this tab all the way down. And it should lock in place. Once you have that connected, you can go ahead and connect your climate controls. You want to get that nice snap in. Climate controls are connected. Lastly, we're going to connect our main USB and our main GPS. All right, let's go ahead and connect our main USB. and our factory GPS. Looks like we have everything connected. We're going to go ahead and put it back temporarily. You just want to slide it back in, and then we're going to power up the vehicle and make sure everything is functioning, and we'll put the buttons in the top and we'll wrap this thing up. Once you have your unit pushed in, you want to just press it in and the clips will bind in. You want to leave your buttons, the cables protruding here, and then you can connect your buttons and then push them in. Before you push them in, you want to turn on the system and test them to make sure that everything is working right. And once you know everything is working right, you can just push the buttons in and they'll click in. And now to put this thing back together, you just put it back in pretty much reverse order from the way you took them apart. You won't be needing the 6 screws that connected the faceplate here, because obviously the clips are the only thing holding it, along with the screws that you're going to put back in the top holes up here. Once you're ready, you can just go ahead and tighten those screws in. You don't want to over tighten it, you just tighten it nice and snug. All right, and our radio is in. Now we can go ahead and put the tray for our speaker back in place. You just want to line up all the tabs. Last but not least, we put in our 2 screws for our speaker. And last but not least, we put back on the cover plate for the cover for our speaker. Smack it in, and that's it. Pretty much done. Now let's go ahead and fire this thing up and see how it works. All right, there you go. The boot up time is good. You want to go to console. You can see our original Sync 3 interface here. You want to check that our volume buttons are working. Volume is working fine. Audio is working fine. We want to check our backup camera. Backup camera is working. The doors are working perfectly. We want to check our buttons now to make sure that they're working. The ABS comes on, the traction control button works. Our hazards are working. And the 360 camera button works. So we're good. So what we can do now is just go ahead and push our buttons back in. Now our buttons are in, and now we can go ahead and put the blank plate on the other button here. Now our buttons are in, our screen is working fine, and it's working great. All right, we're back in the car now, and I'm going to run through some of the features of the Autotech 14.4-inch screen. Now, as you can see here, the screen is going to be a little bit different than when you first get it from factory. I've customized it using Nova Launcher, but you're going to have all the same features here. As you can see here, I have all my apps installed: Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, Pandora, Google Chrome, VLC Media Player. The unit comes with a thing called console, and this is the most important and coolest feature that I think this unit has: the interface. As you can see here, the original sync features are working. The volume on the steering is working. The best thing about this, I think, is that the features remain the same as if you had your factory radio. So things like if you have your ambient lighting, all of those remain. And you can see it's very responsive. You can adjust your display, your vehicle preferences, all that stuff. And actually, if you have wired Apple CarPlay and you don't want to use the CarPlay from the new unit, you can still plug in and use your Apple CarPlay on the system itself here. That will free up your Wi-Fi for using your tablet. You go to your audio, you have your same radios as the radio channels as usual. You can do the presets. Everything remains the same. Your sources, you still have all your sources. Your Sirius XM, if you have XM radio, stays the same, and it works just fine. Bluetooth works the same as if you were connected to your factory 8-inch radio. That to me is the most important part. Again, your reverse camera works like if you had it in your original system. It works perfectly. Let me see what else that I can say. Oh, the AC controls, it works both with the buttons here, or you can use the touch screen to control your fan speed and change your various temperature settings on your radio, all from the screen here, or you can use the buttons as well. That's one of the things that I loved about it. Retained all the factory stuff, but has Android running on top. As you can see, if you go here, I've paired Apple CarPlay and it connects to my CarPlay, and it's wireless, so you get to have your phone hands-free. You don't have to touch anything. It's all controlled here. Wireless CarPlay works just as usual. Another one of the features that I have that I liked about mine is you can see up here I've installed a SIM card, so I can actually use the apps on here and go to the Play Store and download them without having a Wi-Fi connection. I just use my SIM card and I can watch YouTube or whatever else you want. I don't suggest doing that, but you have the capabilities. The settings work just like an Android, so if you're familiar with an Android, this runs Android on here, so you can change the settings and sideload apps and do all the different things you could do with any Android tablet or Android phone. So yeah, let me jump into Google Maps. Google Maps works fine. You can use this on the go, and now you don't have to worry about having your phone connected. You have Google Maps all built into the screen right here, and the interface looks amazing. It's huge. The screen is responsive. All the apps work well. There's no lag. There's no glitching. There's no delay. Everything runs smooth and the transitions are great. So yeah, as I said, this is Nova launcher, so mine looks a little bit different and you can customize this any way you want. Other than that, I love it, and hopefully this might convince you guys to jump in and purchase one of these things. So far, I've had no issues. Everything works fine. Everything works flawlessly, and I have no complaints.